Muslim girl mocked by classmates, then her science project shocks the world. How will this story turn out? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The classroom buzzed with energy as students chatted excitedly about their science projects. Posters adorned the walls and the smell of glue and markers filled the air. It was the final week before the school's annual science fair, and everyone was racing to put the finishing touches on their experiments. In the corner of the room, Fatima sat quietly at her desk, carefully assembling a model of her project. The 14-year-old Muslim girl, dressed in her neatly ironed school uniform and pink hijab, worked with precision and focus. Her project, a solar-powered weather balloon capable of collecting atmospheric data, was unlike anything her peers had attempted. Fatima's love for science had started early. As a child, she would spend hours gazing at the stars with her father, who would tell her stories about great scientists from history. "The sky is not the limit, Fatima," he would say. "It's just the beginning." But not everyone shared Fatima's enthusiasm for her project. At a nearby table, a group of students whispered and giggled, casting occasional glances in her direction. "Look at her," one of the boys, Ethan, sneered. "Does she really think that balloon thing is going to work? I bet it'll pop before it even gets off the ground," another girl, Lily, added with a smirk. "She's wasting her time." Fatima heard the comments but pretended not to notice. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the tiny solar panels on her model. She had grown used to the taunts and whispers, but they still stung. All she wanted was to be seen for her abilities, not judged for her faith or appearance. As the class continued, Mr. Carter, the science teacher, walked around the room, stopping to observe each project. When he reached Fatima's desk, he paused, his eyes lighting up as he examined her work. "Fatima, this is incredible," he said, picking up her model carefully. "A solar-powered weather balloon? Tell me more about it." Fatima's cheeks flushed with pride as she explained. "The balloon is designed to collect atmospheric data like temperature and humidity, and transmit it back to a base station. I'm hoping it could be used to predict weather patterns and even help in disaster management." Mr. Carter nodded, clearly impressed. "This is ambitious," he said. "And exactly the kind of thinking we need in science. Have you considered entering this in the National Science Fair?" Fatima hesitated. The idea of presenting her project on a larger stage was both exciting and terrifying. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," she admitted. "Nonsense," Mr. Carter said with a warm smile. "You have something special here. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." But despite Mr. Carter's encouragement, Fatima couldn't shake the doubts that lingered in her mind. The whispers and laughter from her classmates continued, each comment chipping away at her confidence. During lunch that day, Fatima sat alone under a tree in the schoolyard, sketching out improvements for her project. She tried to focus on her work, but the voices of Ethan and Lily echoed in her mind. "Why do they hate me so much?" she thought, her heart heavy. "I've never done anything to hurt them." Her older brother, Ahmed, had once told her that people often fear what they don't understand. "Sometimes ignorance makes people mean," he had said. "But that doesn't mean you should stop being yourself." Fatima clung to those words, using them as a shield against the negativity. She resolved to pour all her energy into her project, determined to prove her worth not just to others but to herself. The classroom grew quieter as the weeks passed, and the day of the school science fair drew nearer. Fatima spent every spare moment perfecting her project, pouring her heart and soul into it. Her desk at home was covered with blueprints, solar panels, and tiny circuit boards, while her laptop displayed pages of research on atmospheric science. Her family became her greatest cheerleaders. Her mother would often bring her tea and snacks while she worked late into the night, and her younger sister, Amina, watched in awe as Fatima carefully soldered wires onto a circuit board. "Will your balloon really fly, Fatima?" Amina asked one evening, her wide eyes filled with wonder. Fatima smiled, her hands steady as she worked. "That's the plan," she said. "It's going to collect data from the atmosphere and send it back to the ground station. If it works, it could help predict storms and other weather patterns." Amina clapped her hands excitedly. "You're like a scientist from my cartoons." Fatima laughed, the sound lightening the weight she often carried. "Maybe one day," she said, ruffling her sister's hair. At school, however, the atmosphere was far less supportive. Ethan and Lily continued their taunts, their words sharper as they saw how seriously Fatima was taking her project. "Look at her," Ethan scoffed one day, loud enough for Fatima to hear. "She thinks she's some kind of genius. That balloon's going to be a total disaster." Lily smirked, leaning against her desk. Maybe we should bring popcorn to the science fair. It'll be fun watching it crash and burn. Fatima's hands tightened around her notebook, but she refused to let their words break her focus. She reminded herself of Mr. Carter's encouragement and her family's unwavering belief in her. They were the voices she chose to listen to. But even Fatima's resolve wasn't immune to setbacks. One afternoon, during a crucial test of her prototype, disaster struck. She had carefully inflated the weather balloon in an open field near her house, attaching the solar panels and sensors with meticulous care. Her laptop displayed a live feed of the data the balloon was supposed to collect. As the balloon began to ascend, Fatima's heart soared with it. But just as it reached a significant height, a strong gust of wind blew it off course. The balloon wobbled, its movement erratic, before colliding with a tree. The sensors dangled precariously as the balloon deflated, its progress halted. "No," Fatima cried, running toward the wreckage. She carefully untangled the sensors from the branches, her chest tight with disappointment. The balloon was beyond repair, and one of the solar panels had cracked during the fall. That evening, Fatima sat at her desk, her head in her hands. Tears blurred her vision as she stared at the broken pieces of her project. "Maybe they're right," she whispered to herself. "Maybe I'm just wasting my time." But as the night wore on, Fatima's sadness slowly gave way to determination. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "The sky is not the limit, Fatima. It's just the beginning." She thought about all the hours she had spent researching and building, all the dreams she had for what her project could accomplish. She couldn't let one failure define her. Taking a deep breath, Fatima began to sketch a new design. She made adjustments based on what she had learned from the test, finding ways to make the balloon more stable and the sensors more secure. Her setbacks became lessons, each one pushing her closer to success. The next day, Fatima brought her damaged project to school, determined to fix it before the science fair. Mr. Carter noticed her quiet demeanor and approached her desk. "Rough day?" he asked gently. Fatima nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "The test didn't go well. The balloon got caught in a tree and now it's broken." Mr. Carter studied her for a moment before placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Every great scientist faces failures," he said. "But do you know what makes them great? They learn from those failures and keep going. I know you can do this, Fatima." His words reignited the spark in Fatima's heart. She spent the rest of the day working on her project, her determination stronger than ever. Even when Ethan and Lily threw more snide comments her way, she blocked them out, focusing only on her goal. Over the next week, Fatima rebuilt her weather balloon from scratch. She stayed up late every night, testing each component and refining her design. Her parents worried about her overworking herself, but Fatima assured them she was okay. "This is important to me," she told them. "I need to see it through." Finally, the day of the school science fair arrived. The gymnasium was filled with tables displaying a wide array of projects, from simple volcano models to elaborate robotics. The air buzzed with excitement as students explained their work to teachers, judges, and curious parents. Fatima stood nervously by her table, her newly built weather balloon prominently displayed. She had decorated her booth with charts, diagrams, and photos of her testing process. Despite her nerves, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as she looked at her finished project. Her pride, however, was short-lived. Ethan and Lily stopped by her booth, their smirks as irritating as ever. "Wow, you actually finished it," Ethan said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm impressed. I thought you'd give up after your little tree incident." Lily snickered, crossing her arms. "Too bad it's not going to work. But hey, at least it looks nice." Fatima clenched her fists, resisting the urge to snap back. Instead, she focused on the supportive faces in the crowd, her family, her teacher, and even a few classmates who had started to take notice of her dedication. When the judges arrived at Fatima's booth, she took a deep breath and began her presentation. She explained the purpose of her weather balloon, how it could collect atmospheric data, and the potential applications for disaster prediction and environmental monitoring. As she spoke, the judges nodded, clearly impressed by her knowledge and passion. Fatima's voice grew steadier with each word, her confidence shining through. To demonstrate her project, Fatima launched a small test balloon within the gymnasium. The balloon rose smoothly, its sensors transmitting data to her laptop in real time. The crowd watched in awe as the numbers appeared on the screen, a tangible proof of her project's success. When the demonstration ended, the judges broke into applause, joined by many of the students and parents in the crowd. Even Ethan and Lily looked stunned, their smug expressions replaced by disbelief. As the science fair continued, Fatima felt a newfound sense of pride. For the first time, she wasn't just the quiet girl in the corner, she was a scientist, an innovator, and someone who had earned the respect of her peers. The atmosphere in the gymnasium was electric as the science fair continued, but Fatima remained in a bubble of focus and quiet confidence. Her successful demonstration had drawn a steady stream of visitors to her booth, including parents, teachers, and students who had previously ignored or doubted her. Each person she spoke to seemed genuinely interested in her work, and for the first time, Fatima felt seen for who she truly was, a budding scientist with a bright future. Even the judges lingered longer at her booth than they had at others, asking detailed questions about her weather balloon's functionality and its potential applications. Fatima answered each question with precision and enthusiasm, her nervousness dissipating with every passing moment. "It's remarkable how much thought you've put into this," one of the judges, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, said. "I've judged many science fairs over the years, and it's rare to see such a practical and innovative project from a student your age." Fatima's cheeks flushed with pride. "Thank you," she said. "I just wanted to create something that could make a real difference." As the judges moved on to evaluate other projects, Fatima finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She glanced across the gymnasium and noticed Ethan and Lily standing near their own booth, which displayed a sleek but relatively simple model of a drone. Both of them were watching her with expressions that ranged from annoyance to grudging respect. "Looks like they're finally taking you seriously," a familiar voice said. Fatima turned to see her teacher, Mr. Carter, standing nearby with a proud smile. "I think they're more surprised than anything," Fatima replied with a small laugh. Mr. Carter nodded. "You've earned this, Fatima. Regardless of what happens with the competition, you should be proud of yourself. You've shown everyone here what it means to persevere." Fatima smiled, her confidence bolstered by his words. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I wouldn't have gotten this far without your support." As the day wore on, Fatima found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the late nights spent refining her design, the moments of doubt and frustration, and the unwavering support of her family. She also thought about the taunts and whispers from Ethan, Lily, and others who had underestimated her. Each obstacle she had faced felt like a stepping stone, leading her closer to her goal. And now, as she stood among the rows of projects in the gymnasium, she felt a sense of accomplishment that no amount of ridicule could diminish. When it was time for the winners to be announced, the crowd gathered near the stage, buzzing with anticipation. Fatima stood near the back, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She told herself that it didn't matter if she won. What mattered was that she had proven to herself that she was capable. But deep down, she couldn't help hoping that her hard work would be recognized. The principal stepped up to the microphone, holding a list of the winners. "Before we announce the results, I want to commend every student who participated in this year's science fair," she said. "The level of creativity and dedication we've seen today has been truly inspiring." The crowd applauded, and Fatima felt her heart pounding in her chest. The principal began announcing the winners, starting with the third-place prize. A team of students who had designed a water purification system stepped forward to accept their ribbons, smiling proudly as the crowd cheered. Next came the second-place prize, which went to Ethan and Lily for their drone project. Fatima watched as they walked to the stage, their expressions a mix of pride and lingering disbelief. Ethan glanced in her direction as he passed, but for once, there was no mockery in his gaze, only a begrudging acknowledgement of her success. "And now," the principal said, her voice rising slightly, "the first-place winner of this year's science fair is Fatima Ali for her solar-powered weather balloon project." For a moment, Fatima couldn't move. The words seemed surreal, echoing in her mind as the crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't until Amina, her little sister, tugged on her sleeve and said, "Go Fatima! You won," that she finally stepped forward. The walk to the stage felt like a dream. Fatima's heart raced as she climbed the steps and accepted the blue ribbon from the principal, who smiled warmly at her. "Congratulations, Fatima," the principal said. "Your project is truly extraordinary." "Thank you," Fatima replied, her voice trembling slightly. She turned to face the crowd, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. Her parents stood near the front, beaming with pride, while Mr. Carter gave her a thumbs up. Even Ethan and Lily were clapping, their expressions less smug and more respectful than she had ever seen. As Fatima stepped down from the stage, she was greeted by a flurry of congratulations from classmates, teachers, and even a few parents she didn't know. The silver-haired judge who had admired her project earlier approached her with a warm smile. "Fatima, your work is incredible," the judge said. I'd love to discuss the possibility of entering your project in a national competition. With some additional development, it could have a significant impact. Fatima's eyes widened in disbelief. A national competition? She repeated. That sounds amazing. It's well-deserved, the judge replied. You have a bright future ahead of you. That evening, as Fatima and her family celebrated at home, she reflected on everything she had learned over the past few weeks. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every late night, every setback, and every moment of doubt. She thought about the classmates who had mocked her and realized that their opinions no longer held any power over her. She had proven to herself, and to the world, that she was capable of greatness. And in doing so, she had found a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Fatima, her father said, interrupting her thoughts. I'm so proud of you. You've shown everyone what it means to persevere and follow your dreams. Fatima smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Baba. I couldn't have done it without you and Mama, and Amina, of course. Amina grinned, holding up the blue ribbon. You're the best scientist ever, Fatima. The triumph of the science fair was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Fatima worked with her teacher and the silver-haired judge to refine her project for the national competition. She added new features to the weather balloon, including a more robust data transmission system and a camera to capture images of the atmosphere. The process was challenging, but Fatima embraced it with enthusiasm. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her work could have a real impact on the world. When the day of the national competition arrived, Fatima stood in a massive convention center filled with some of the brightest young minds in the country. The scale of the event was intimidating, but she reminded herself of how far she had come. As she set up her booth, she noticed a few familiar faces among the crowd: her parents, her little sister, and even Mr. Carter, who had made the trip to support her. Their presence gave her the confidence she needed to face the challenge ahead. The national competition was unlike anything Fatima had ever experienced. The convention center buzzed with energy as hundreds of young innovators showcased their projects. Rows of booths stretched across the massive space, each one displaying groundbreaking ideas, from renewable energy solutions to advancements in medical technology. Fatima's booth, though modest in size, stood out for its intricate diagrams, live data feed, and the sleek new design of her solar-powered weather balloon. Despite her growing confidence, Fatima couldn't ignore the nervous flutter in her chest. The other participants seemed so polished, their presentations flawless, and their projects cutting edge. She glanced down at her hands, which trembled slightly as she adjusted the display. You've got this, a familiar voice said, breaking through her thoughts. Fatima looked up to see Mr. Carter standing beside her, his expression filled with encouragement. You've worked hard to get here. Just focus on sharing your passion and the rest will fall into place. Fatima nodded, taking a deep breath. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'll do my best. As the competition began, waves of visitors flooded the convention floor, including judges, industry professionals, and curious onlookers. Fatima greeted each visitor with a polite smile, explaining her project with as much clarity and enthusiasm as she could muster. Her words flowed more easily as she settled into the rhythm of presenting, and she began to notice genuine interest in the eyes of those who stopped by. One judge, a prominent scientist who specialized in climate research, lingered at Fatima's booth longer than expected. Your project is impressive, he said, studying the live data feed from the balloon. It's rare to see a design that's both innovative and practical. Have you considered how this could be scaled for real-world applications? Fatima's heart raced with excitement. Yes, she said, her voice steady. I believe this technology could be used for disaster prediction, especially in areas prone to hurricanes and floods. It could provide early warnings and help save lives. The judge nodded thoughtfully. You've got a bright future ahead of you, Fatima. I'll be keeping an eye on your work. The day wore on and Fatima's booth continued to attract attention. But the most meaningful interaction came from a group of young girls who approached her near the end of the event. They wore wide-eyed expressions of admiration as they examined her project. Are you really the one who built this? One of the girls asked, her voice filled with awe. Fatima smiled. Yes, I am. It took a lot of hard work, but I loved every minute of it. The girl hesitated before speaking again. I want to be a scientist someday, but people always tell me it's too hard. Fatima knelt down to the girl's level, her voice gentle but firm. Don't ever let anyone tell you what you can or can't do. If you love science, follow that passion. You're capable of more than you know. The girl beamed, her confidence visibly growing. Thank you, she said. I will. As the girls walked away, Fatima felt a surge of pride. Moments like these reminded her why she had pursued her project despite the challenges. She wanted to inspire others to believe in themselves. As the competition entered its final hours, Fatima faced one last challenge. During a live demonstration of her weather balloon, a sudden technical glitch caused the data transmission to freeze. Panic surged through her as she realized that her laptop screen was stuck on a blank page, and the balloon's sensors weren't responding. A crowd had gathered to watch the demonstration, and whispers of concern rippled through the group. Fatima could feel her classmates' eyes on her, along with the weight of their skepticism. For a brief moment, the memory of Ethan and Lily's taunts resurfaced, threatening to shake her resolve. But instead of panicking, Fatima took a deep breath and focused on the skills she had spent months honing. She quickly diagnosed the issue, a loose connection in the wiring, and worked calmly to fix it. Her hands moved with precision as she reconnected the wires, her mind blocking out the noise around her. After what felt like an eternity, the live data feed reappeared on her screen, and the crowd erupted into applause. Fatima let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. "That's how you handle pressure," Mr. Carter said from the sidelines, his voice filled with pride. When the time came to announce the winners, Fatima stood among the participants, her heart pounding in her chest. She reminded herself that simply being part of the competition was a victory in itself, but she couldn't help hoping that her hard work would be recognized. The announcer began with the third-place prize, which went to a team that had developed a revolutionary water filtration system. The second-place prize followed, awarded to a young engineer who had designed a cost-effective prosthetic limb. And now, the announcer said, pausing for dramatic effect, the first-place winner of the National Young Innovators Competition is Fatima Ali for her solar-powered weather balloon project. The room erupted into cheers as Fatima's name was called. She stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing to process what had just happened. It wasn't until Mr. Carter nudged her gently that she stepped forward, her legs trembling with a mix of nerves and exhilaration. As she accepted the trophy, Fatima felt a wave of emotions wash over her, pride, relief, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She looked out at the audience and spotted her family, their faces beaming with joy. Even her classmates, including Ethan and Lily, were clapping for her, their expressions reflecting genuine respect. Fatima took a deep breath before stepping up to the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "This project started as a simple idea, but it became so much more than that. It taught me the value of perseverance, the importance of believing in myself, and the power of community." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. To anyone out there who's ever felt like they didn't belong, whether because of their background, their faith, or anything else, I want you to know that you do belong. And you are capable of achieving great things. The applause that followed was deafening, filling the room with an energy that Fatima would never forget. In the days that followed, Fatima's victory at the national competition garnered widespread attention. News outlets covered her story, highlighting her resilience and the innovative potential of her project. Messages poured in from people around the world, many of them expressing admiration for her determination and courage. But for Fatima, the greatest reward was the knowledge that her work could make a real difference. Her project caught the interest of environmental organizations and research institutions, and discussions began about developing it into a scalable tool for disaster prediction. Fatima also became a source of inspiration for countless young people, particularly girls and members of underrepresented communities. She received letters from aspiring scientists who saw themselves in her story, and she made it a personal mission to encourage others to pursue their dreams. Fatima's victory at the national competition marked the beginning of a whirlwind chapter in her life. Her story quickly gained traction beyond the science community, with news outlets, social media, and even local governments recognizing her work. To her surprise, she was invited to speak at conferences and events, where she shared not only her project but the journey that had brought her to this moment. Her first public speaking event took place at a local university. The auditorium was packed with students, professors, and community members, all eager to hear from the young innovator. Fatima stood at the podium, the stage lights casting a warm glow around her. She took a deep breath and began her speech, her voice steady and clear. "I never thought I'd be standing here today," she said. "When I started this project, it was just an idea, something I hoped might make a small difference. But along the way, I learned that the most important part of any journey is believing in yourself, even when others don't." She spoke about the challenges she had faced, the mocking comments from her classmates, the technical setbacks, and her own moments of self-doubt. But she also shared the lessons she had learned, emphasizing the importance of perseverance, support, and staying true to one's vision. "I want each of you to know that your dreams are valid," she said, her gaze sweeping across the audience. "No matter who you are or where you come from, you have the power to achieve great things." The applause that followed was overwhelming, and as Fatima stepped off the stage, she was greeted by a line of students eager to speak with her. Many of them shared their own struggles and aspirations, thanking her for inspiring them to keep going. As Fatima's work gained recognition, opportunities began to pour in. She was invited to collaborate with environmental organizations, and her weather balloon project was adapted for use in disaster-prone regions. The data it collected proved invaluable for predicting storms and monitoring climate patterns, and Fatima felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that her work was making a tangible impact. One day, Fatima received an invitation to participate in an international science expo in Geneva. The event brought together innovators from around the world to showcase their work and discuss global challenges. Fatima was both thrilled and nervous about the opportunity, but her family and Mr. Carter encouraged her to seize it. "This is your chance to share your ideas on a global stage," Mr. Carter said. "You've earned this." The Science Expo was a dazzling event, with booths and displays representing every corner of the globe. Fatima's booth, which featured a live demonstration of her weather balloon, attracted a steady stream of visitors. Scientists, engineers, and policymakers stopped by to learn about her project, and many expressed interest in collaborating or funding further development. Fatima was particularly moved by a conversation she had with a scientist from a small island nation. The scientist explained how rising sea levels and increasingly severe storms were threatening their community, and how a tool like Fatima's weather balloon could help them prepare for and mitigate the impact of these disasters. "Your work could save lives," the scientist said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for what you're doing." The words stayed with Fatima long after the expo ended, fueling her determination to continue pushing the boundaries of her project. Back home, Fatima's life began to shift in other ways as well. The classmates who had once mocked her now treated her with a mix of admiration and guilt. Ethan and Lily in particular made a point of approaching her during lunch one day. "Hey Fatima," Ethan said, his tone unusually subdued. "We just wanted to say, we're sorry for the way we treated you. It wasn't right." Lily nodded, her expression sincere. "You've done something amazing and we were wrong to doubt you." Fatima studied their faces for a moment, her initial instinct to dismiss their apology softening as she saw the genuine regret in their eyes. "Thank you," she said finally. "It means a lot to hear that. And for what it's worth, I hope this experience has taught all of us something about respect." The interaction left Fatima feeling a sense of closure. While their words couldn't erase the hurt they had caused, she was proud of herself for choosing forgiveness and focusing on the positive. As the months passed, Fatima continued to grow as both a scientist and an advocate. She launched a mentorship program for young girls interested in STEM, partnering with schools and community organizations to provide resources and support. The program, which she called Reach for the Skies, quickly gained popularity, with dozens of students signing up to learn from Fatima and her team of mentors. At the first Reach for the Skies workshop, Fatima stood in front of a room filled with eager faces, her heart swelling with pride. "When I was your age, I faced a lot of challenges," she told the group. "But I also had people who believed in me and helped me find my way. Now, it's my turn to do the same for you." The workshop was a resounding success, and as Fatima watched the students build and test their own small science projects, she felt a profound sense of purpose. She knew that this was just the beginning of what she hoped to achieve. One evening, as Fatima sat at her desk reviewing plans for an upcoming event, her father entered the room and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've come so far, Fatima," he said, his voice filled with pride. "But I hope you know that your journey is about more than just awards and recognition. It's about the lives you're touching and the change you're creating." Fatima looked up at her father, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I know, Baba," she said. "And I'm grateful for every step of this journey." Her father smiled. "The sky is not the limit, Fatima. It's just the beginning." As Fatima's work gained more recognition, she found herself balancing her responsibilities as a student, a mentor, and a budding innovator. Her schedule was packed with speaking engagements, mentorship sessions, and ongoing research for her weather balloon project. Despite the challenges, she thrived under the weight of her ambitions, driven by the knowledge that her efforts were making a real difference. One of the most profound moments in her journey came when she was invited to speak at a global summit on climate change. The event was attended by world leaders, scientists, and activists, all gathered to discuss solutions to one of the most pressing issues of their time. Fatima stood backstage, her hands clutching her notes as her name was announced. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. The room fell silent as she began to speak. "My name is Fatima Ali," she said, her voice steady. "And I am here to talk about the power of innovation and resilience. My journey began with a simple idea, a weather balloon that could collect atmospheric data. But along the way it became so much more than that. It became a symbol of hope, of what we can achieve when we refuse to let obstacles define us." She spoke about the challenges she had faced, from the technical setbacks to the social barriers imposed by prejudice. But she also highlighted the support she had received, from her family, her teacher, and the countless people who had believed in her vision. "I stand here today not just as an innovator, but as a reminder that anyone, regardless of their background, can contribute to the solutions we need," she said. "The fight against climate change requires all of us, and I believe that the next generation of leaders is already here, ready to make their mark." The audience erupted into applause as Fatima finished her speech. As she stepped off the stage, she was approached by several delegates who expressed their admiration for her work and their interest in collaborating on future projects. Back home, Fatima continued to build on her success. She expanded her mentorship program, Reach for the Skies, partnering with international organizations to provide access to STEM education for girls in underserved communities. The program's impact was immediate, with students from around the world writing to Fatima to share their stories and thank her for inspiring them. One letter in particular stood out. It was from a girl named Yasmin, who lived in a remote village and dreamed of becoming an engineer. "Your story showed me that it's okay to dream big, even when the odds feel stacked against you," Yasmin wrote. "I've started building my own projects and I hope one day I can make a difference just like you." Fatima felt a lump rise in her throat as she read Yasmin's words. She replied immediately, offering encouragement and promising to send resources to help Yasmin on her journey. Moments like these reminded Fatima of the ripple effect her work was creating, and she was determined to keep pushing forward. As the years passed, Fatima's weather balloon project evolved into a full-fledged initiative. She collaborated with research institutions, governments, and NGOs to deploy her technology in regions prone to natural disasters. The data collected by her balloons proved invaluable for early warning systems, saving lives and reducing the impact of severe weather events. Fatima also began working on new innovations, using the lessons she had learned from her first project to tackle other global challenges. Her reputation as a scientist and advocate continued to grow, and she became a sought-after speaker at conferences and events. Despite her busy schedule, Fatima always made time for her family and her community. She returned to her old school often, visiting classrooms and encouraging students to pursue their passions. Her presence was a source of pride for the school, and her story became a symbol of what was possible with determination and hard work. One day, Fatima received an unexpected email from Ethan and Lily. The two classmates who had once mocked her had followed her journey over the years and wanted to reach out. "Hi Fatima," the email began. "We don't know if you'll remember us, but we just wanted to say how sorry we are for the way we treated you back in school. Looking back, we realize how wrong we were, and we've been inspired by everything you've accomplished. Thank you for showing us what true strength looks like." Fatima read the email twice, her emotions a mix of surprise and gratitude. She replied with a kind and forgiving message, thanking them for their words and encouraging them to continue supporting others in their journeys. The exchange was a reminder of how far she had come, not just in her career, but in her ability to rise above negativity and focus on the positive impact she could make. On the 10th anniversary of her first science fair victory, Fatima stood in front of a packed auditorium, delivering the keynote speech at a global STEM conference. As she looked out at the audience, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her here. 10 years ago, I was just a shy girl with a dream, she began. I faced challenges that tested my resolve, and there were moments when I doubted myself. But through it all, I learned that resilience, support, and belief in your own potential can take you farther than you ever imagined. She spoke about the lessons she had learned, the people who had supported her, and the importance of creating opportunities for others. "The world needs your ideas, your passion, and your courage," she said. "Never let anyone tell you that you can't make a difference." The applause that followed was thunderous, and as Fatima stepped off the stage, she was greeted by a group of young students who had been inspired by her story. "You've shown us what's possible," one of them said. "Thank you for being our role model." Fatima smiled, her heart full. "The sky is not the limit," she said. "It's just the beginning." Fatima's journey was far from over. With each new challenge she tackled and each life she touched, she continued to prove that the power of perseverance and passion could change the world. And as she looked toward the future, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment.